Hello, everyone. Hopefully, this will be an interesting panel. I can't promise too much. I do want to say, I don't want to promise too much, but I hope for it. I do want to say that while I'm Director of Operations and Strategy at the MIT Media Lab, I'm not a researcher. I've been interested in biospace and getting involved in it, but I'm not representing the Media Lab up here. I'm hopefully representing myself in a way that's not too embarrassing. So what I'd like to do is first ask the panel to introduce themselves. They'll save us a little bit of time and what they do and their background. Jack?
Hi, my name's Jack Kreindler. I've been a practicing physician for 21 years. I've been a practicing geek for over 30 years. Really, I suppose in the UK, one of the first people to have both been a practicing physician and also engineering and innovating in digital health, specifically originally in more looking at analytics in large populations and seeing what made them sick, and more latterly in sort of deep, what we now call AI, probably not correctly, to basically help doctors make better earlier decisions and for us to discover better drugs.
Good morning, I'm Jeroen Taas. I'm leading strategy and innovation for Philips, and you probably all know Philips for their televisions and light bulbs. Well, I got news for you. We no longer sell bulbs, light bulbs, and televisions. We're 100% health tech company, both in the consumer space as well in the professional space, and increasingly we're looking at how the technologies that we're going to talk about will create a way better health systems with better outcomes for billions of people. So that's our mission, to improve the health of over 3 billion people by 2030.
Good afternoon, my name is Shez Partovi. I'm Worldwide Head for Healthcare, Life Sciences, and Genomics at Amazon Web Services. Physician by training, practiced for about 10 years. And prior to joining AWS, I was Chief Digital Officer for the 4th largest health system in the United States, responsible for 25,000 physicians and about 60,000 employees across 22 states. AWS practice in healthcare life science is about 6 years old and focusing on elevating the human condition.
Hello everyone, my name is Ronen Wiener. I'm heading strategy and innovation for Meuchelet Health Services, one of the most innovative and dynamic HMOs in Israel. In my background, I have around 15 years of strategy, business development, innovation, startups, incubators, and healthcare. And this is what we bring to disrupt and transform the way that we provide healthcare to the Israeli citizens and hopefully for the world itself.
Hi everyone, my name is Eran Becker. A little bit about myself. I was born in Israel, moved to the US, where I studied there. And about a year ago, I decided to come back and enlist at the IDF. I currently work at the Medical Innovation Unit of the Israeli Medical Corps. The goal of the Medical Innovation Unit is to collaborate and work with our strategic partners in the healthcare ecosystem to tackle our biggest challenges. Some of these challenges might be in the field of wellness, data, and as well as other healthcare stuff.
Hi, I'm Saf Parker from Minister of Health, Head of the Digital Technologies. Most of the day life in the work, I'm driving to combine startups and health organization in order to make pilot trials, in order to bring a revolution to the Israeli health system.
Great. Let me give a quick introduction of what we're talking about. When the Media Lab was founded, there was a book written by Nicholas Negroponte, and the book was called On Being Digital. And the concept of this book was that everything would become digital. And the other way of saying this is software will eat the world, but software and hardware will eat and digital hardware will eat the world. Most things in the physical world, most things in our kind of commerce world have become digital. The question now becomes, is that revolution going to wash over the health space? And if it washes over the health space, what are the impacts of that? What does it mean if we have digital reading devices that read our health every day. What does it mean to have AI in drug development, in healthcare, etc.? And what is the real extent of that revolution? What can it do for us? Start with Jack.
Oh, with me? Gosh. Yeah, well, the thing about the digital revolution is kind of a bit scary for me because still as the only practicing physician here on in the panel, it means that I'm going to be out of a job, or maybe. Look, I think the reality is that no single human being is capable of knowing, remembering all the information, all the knowledge about individual patients, let alone about the entire canon of medical truth. And what digital technologies mean to me as a doctor is the fact that everything that is known about every person potentially at every point in their life, and everything that has happened as well as is happening or could happen, could be at my fingertips, or even more radical than that, machines could be making the decisions better than me. Now, we know that is the case with airplanes, presumably cars. We can do things better, safer, and so on. But the big question for me is, where does that leave my role? Is there a role in the digital revolution for the human to human? Awesome. And I have some views on that, but that's kind of
great.
An opener for one.
Awesome. Asaf?
I think that you have an expert role. It's still different between humans and machines. And if you're asking yourself what will be my role, I'm sure that you've got a really special role being a specialist.
I'm going to go for a job at your place, when that happens, so sure.
I think we still need human judgment in the end. So, and I think that's hard for a machine to take liability and judgment and apply that to complex cases. So, even if a lot will be automated and supported by technology, I think it will take a long time before we let a computer fully diagnose cancer, apply the treatment, and help the patient recover. I think there will be human beings in that process for a long time to come.
So let's go over the other impacts it'll have. Eran?
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with what everyone said here. One specific thing that I can even engage with the audience here, who has an Apple Watch or any sort of wearable device on them right now?
Have Apple Watches in the audience?
Yeah, so I think we can already see that the revolution is already here. Whether we like it or not, it is coming. But I think one important thing is that when we have that revolution here, we need to focus on how we collaborate with one another in order to use these devices to give us the best data and to improve everything overall.
Maybe I'll add a thought. What we're hearing from our customers at AWS is when they look at digitization, the common question after is, so what? When you have digital data, the idea is to move from data to information, from information to knowledge, knowledge to insights, and ultimately to prediction. And what we're seeing our customers focus on is how to take that digitization, that digital transformation, and to convert that to predicting patient health events so that you can intervene early, predicting congestive heart failure so you can intervene early, predicting an asthma attack so you can prevent the attack. And so a lot of focus that we're seeing across the globe is taking that data to actually put into a prediction model that supports the clinician in their decision making and almost an augmented decision support system. We're not certainly seeing from our customers a movement towards replacing doctors, and I suspect your comment was more to instigate some thought, but rather a lot of energy spent towards becoming a tool for the clinician, the nurse, the physician to predict an event and intervene before it occurs to improve quality, reduce cost, improve safety, improve population health, and so on. And
I want to tell you how it already is happening today in cancer care. So every cancer is unique. He knows that. I'm not a doctor, but so we can see cancer in an image. We can assess we can quantify it. We can see how it metastasizes. We can see how aggressive it is. Then we can take the pathology and apply AI and find biomarkers that will point us to the cells, that probably 10 to 15 cells that may be driving the cancer. We can take the DNA. We can overlay that with liquid biopsy and look into patterns in proteins. There's no way anybody can do that without AI, without aggregating the data, interpreting the data, creating really a model of the cancer. And then comes the next step that's even more complex. What therapy do you select? Are you going to do surgery? Under what conditions? Radiation, chemotherapy, immunotherapy. There are thousands of clinical trials going on. So how do you match the profile to the treatment? No way any doctor could do that today. Now you want to take it one step further. Can you stratify populations to identify risk and screening programs that may be a combination of imaging and liquid biopsy? Interaction of those drugs can be tracked. We can do robotics on the surgery. We can do smart catheter ablation in the therapy. This stuff doesn't work without robots, it doesn't work without AI, and it doesn't work without doctors. But they're going to work in a completely different way, and then we're going to apply the pathways from Dana-Farber, one of the leading cancer pathways, so that 90% of the hospitals that diagnose cancer and treat cancer are not cancer centers. So now can we bring that knowledge from Dana-Farber, from Mount Sinai and others into the community hospital? We cannot do that without a core IT infrastructure and digital technology. So this is just one example, but it's happening today. It's just going very slowly.
That what Yaron has mentioned is about the precision medicine and the ability for improvement of the quality of care. But I think that beyond these dimensions, there are a lot of promise in the potential transformation of healthcare service and delivery of healthcare systems. One of them is about accessibility. With the use of digital video services, with the use of sensors, point-of-care diagnostics, we can bring medicine to the periphery, to other areas that lack the service. We're talking about more utilization of the medical resource, because you can take out all the administrative, bureaucratic processes with automation and utilize the scarce resource of the medical professions and empower them to do at the top of the license instead of dealing with nonsense within their practice. And there is another promise about empowering the patients to be more managing their wellness and to deal with self-care and reduce the burden from the clinics. So the combination of these aspects, and we can see them coming into our healthcare delivery processes, could really transform the way that we deliver healthcare and also help us a lot within the constraints that the healthcare system is within.
Well, let's go there for a second, which is the other side of the equation. We've been talking mainly about the provider side of the equation, but the patient or the human side of the equation, between wearables, implantables, measuring things at home, how is that going to change by the digital revolution? How will it change people's lives and health?
Well, at some point in lives, we will become cyborgs. We will be augmented by technology, helping us with our memory, helping us, augmenting us with the way we manage our health. We already see it. MIT is really very advanced in creating artificial limbs that actually can feel. So not only, make the movements, but actually give you the sensation and the feeling of touch. So we're already doing this. Brain implants are already being used to suppress pain and other neuromodulation. So it's not far-fetched to assume that at some point, our life will be augmented with technology. We won't even notice. It will be there, and it will help us.
Shez?
I'll use an example of asthma. There is a great case example from one of our AWS customers, a company called Propeller Health. If you've had asthma or know someone who has asthma, whenever this company has put together a device that every time you have an asthma attack, it sends a signal to the cloud that stores the temperature where you were, the pressure, the pollution index, the ozone index, how physically active you were. All that information at the time of your asthma attack is used to build a machine learning model that predicts your asthma attacks. So when you get up in the morning on that digital app that they have, it predicts the probability of an asthma attack on that day. So you get a personal asthma forecast for yourself. Now, this is not the average asthma forecast for people. It's yours, just your asthma forecast. So think of it as precision digital medicine based on past behavior, past things that have happened to you, and that digital data that's stored. They can create a machine learning model just about you. So those are, and that's today. I'm not saying this is someday happening. This is it's done today, and there's lots of publications demonstrating reduction of hospitalization, reduction of emergency department visits on kids that when they wake up on this app, they see their likelihood, and maybe they shouldn't go to gym that day and exercise because they're likely to have an asthma attack. Conditions are ripe for them.
I think that first we want that the data will be accurate and effective for me as a patient. If it won't be like this, it's nothing gonna work. And if it's be my this and I enlarge my adherence for a new treatment and enlarge the way I looking at my day of life and my well-being. But first of all, we need that the data will be good enough in order to use it.
Yeah, so I want to briefly go back to what Shez talked about, the idea of prediction. So there's patients, at the end of the day, they're all humans. I want to take it to the aspect of at least the soldier side from the IDF. And what we see with the idea of prediction is that it allows us to predict injuries of our soldiers. It allows us to see their physiological performance. And I think this is the line where prevention also comes into healthcare when it comes to the idea of prediction.
I want to make one point which I believe is important, because I talked about something out there, but there's something here and now. There are 2 billion people that don't have access to any care at all. And I think this technology we're talking about can really give access on a phone, symptom checker, simple guidance on how to live healthier, really triaging and say, okay, now I connect you to a doctor on your phone and we'll give you instruction. There's a little outlet, 10 minutes walk where you can pick up a basic medicine. We'll track that for you. We'll make sure you get it and keep it and deal with your diabetes or, other disease. So I think there's a huge opportunity to, on the one hand, make overconsumption of care more efficient and more tuned to personal needs. On the other hand, we should make sure that we also think through the solutions that these 2 billion people need.
Yeah, Jack?
I want to be a bit contentious with my thick British accent a little bit here.
Good.
So the reality is that what digital revolutions do is they personalize and they predict. If you think about that generically, they personalize and predict. And the reality is, on the shop floor, is that the regulatory systems still require a person who you can blame or throw in jail or insure to do the right thing. That's what my job is. And I do something right, you pay me. I do something very wrong, you throw me in jail or strike me off. What personalization and prediction does is it actually makes my life an awful lot harder. Okay? And the biggest bottleneck that we've got is actually the access within the sort of regulatory framework that we've got today of my time. And personalization is extremely interesting, but let's break it down a little bit. Personalization means personalized pricing, and it means a complete breakdown in the way that we test through randomized trials drugs. A cancer, for instance, to your point, is probably not one disease, except if you catch a stage 1 something. It's probably a combination and interaction of 4 key domains and about 200 different interactions. Late stage disease and rarer cancers that we haven't discovered, which actually kill half of us, and in fact 56% of the people that are going to die within a year of getting the diagnosis, are very complex diseases. They don't react well to the A versus B randomized trial. If we do all of our omics and schmomics, we end up with an N of 1 problem, which there is no trial for. And suddenly, I have now got, and Tim Morn's work, Professor Tim Morn at Oxford, has shown how adaptive trials, which are very digitally based, and you're doing high-frequency reassessment of a molecular nature of how the cancer is evolving, has shown that there's a 10-fold increase in the amount of my time required in order to manage one patient if you're treating them properly. So that's the personalization side of it. The prediction side of it, and I'll get to the point of why I'm mentioning all these negatives in just a sec. The prediction side of it is also very interesting. So what if you tell me that I am going to get an asthma attack, or my COPD, my congestive, my pulmonary disease, I'm going to get a flare-up, or I'm going to get congestive heart failure in 5 days' time? You are 99.5% chance that you will in 5 days end up with a 12-day admission to hospital. This is not fantasy, this is work that I did with Cedars-Sinai. What the hell do you do about that? You've got no symptoms, you know you're going to come crashing into hospital, there's no reimbursement code for preventing that problem from happening. So my challenge, and this is the reason for me yapping on about this, is where is the digital revolution going to go in addressing the issues of prediction and the issues of personalization? We need a whole new model of economics and a whole new way of studying these things. And that, to me, is the grand challenge that I'm putting out to the technology companies.
I want to react to the reimbursement because that's where it starts. And you know, we also have done trials in ICUs where we predict cardiac arrest and we actually intervene with medication. You know that better than I do. But if the reimbursement is towards outcomes, which they're trying in the US with Medicare Advantage, where you take on the responsibility for a population, then prevention suddenly becomes the enabler for better outcomes. Now,
sure, but in that particular example, the Medicare Advantage plans, like Care More and Molina, who are looking after millions of people on behalf of the government to prevent them coming crashing into hospital, they are not allowed legally to prescribe something which doesn't have an ICD-10 code against it. So if you have not got a decrease in your breathing capacity by X amount, which is an exacerbation of your pulmonary disease, it's illegal for you to prescribe a preventive drug.
I think what you mentioned is hugely important because generally the regulatory system lags, 10 years behind.
Right.
And especially in healthcare, which is heavily regulated, it will hold off. But, the interesting thing of being a global company is, we're doing business in China where they're looking at these things in a different light.
And the regulation might be more, might be quicker.
Yeah, but also in countries like India and China, they know that they have dramatically improved healthcare. They know that the Western system is never going to work because it's physically impossible to train, to put the systems in place. So there will be large-scale markets where people will start with changing the regulatory environment to promote better outcomes using technology because it's the only way out.
Ronan?
But I want to reflect about the whole notion of these science fiction or maybe more advanced approaches that are lacking the other aspects of really closing the loop. And I think that in order for a revolution to be a real impactful revolution, it should hit the ground of a clinical setting and make sure that there is a practical implications for everything that is coming from these predictions and data. And only when the whole cycle could really create a change in the way that healthcare is delivered, there is a chance to really make this difference. And I think that this is the importance, even before the regulation, the importance of the collaboration that is required all the way with the technology companies that are developing the new technologies and the new horizons and the real world of the healthcare delivery system to make sure that they could be implemented and really create change with the lives of patients.
I want to say something quickly. So Jack did something phenomenal, which I loved, which is talking about the disadvantages of healthcare. At the end of the day, things are going to change and things are going to shift. And I think one thing, at least as healthcare leaders, that we need to do is find those challenges or the systems that might change because of these changes that are being made and collaborate with one another and focus how to solve these challenges so when the revolution comes, we can be exactly at that point to make sure those systems don't fail. So that's the disadvantage. I think it's
So that's probably a good segue, which is when the revolution comes. And the question is, the digital revolution has moved at an amazing pace, right? The cost of digital devices, the cost of getting digital capabilities falls at an extraordinary pace. The opposite is happening in healthcare. It's moving slow, and it's taking longer and longer to do things, and the costs are going up, not down. So, the first question is, is there a way for healthcare to move faster? Is there a way for healthcare to learn about from the consumer technology industry and evolve at a different pace, right? Is there a way, to adopt something like move fast and break things? And what would that mean in the healthcare world, or is it simply impossible because of the risk? Asaf?
I believe that with the digital health revolution, we can move faster. First of all, we can make more data researchers. And after we do this, it's the way for pilots and the way for trials to check our tools, it's more faster. So I really believe this is the way to work. First on data, and other system with people in a safe way, like it should be.
And what's slowing it down?
I'm not sure that something is slowing down. I'm sure that we're working fine. With if we're doing something, we must have a good balance between moving fast and keep the safety of our patients. What's making it really move fast is what we make more and more research, more and more pilot in the health organization, more collaboration between startups and health organization. That is the right way to move fast.
So you did mention the concept of moving fast and breaking things. Specifically, for people who don't know, checking a lot of ideas, and at the same time, if something happened, there's an error, so be it. However, we're in the healthcare community, and for us, the error might not be on the computer screen, it might be in the OR, or it might be the death of someone, or a misdiagnosis of a person. So when we take that sentence, I think that we should at least give it a little tweak to maybe moving as fast as possible and trying to make the least amount of mistakes as we can. And I think we can do that by at least using two different concepts. It's speed and agility. Speed can allow us to move fast and check these technologies along the way. And agility can let us accelerate, decelerate, stabilize. And if we need to stop at the end, then we can stop it before anything happens.
I think what's going to happen is, I saw it yesterday. So somebody sent me the new price list for Walmart for primary care services. Consult $40, dental cleaning $25. So and it's all out of pocket. Sleep test $100. So Walmart, CVS, big retailers are getting into the game. They're going to be extremely consumer oriented. They're going to offer multi-channel opportunities to engage. And it's all going to be consumer driven. We all know that Amazon is getting into the game just for their own employees, creating a way better environment to manage their own health, to deal with chronic disease. So we're going to see something that's happened in the other industries as well. It's not going to start in the hospital. It's going to start with the consumer and with the people who really understand consumers and how they can contribute to their health. Including Philips, because we ship 250 million consumer products every year, and for us, it's a major part of our health tech strategy.
We're certainly seeing a movement towards speed and agility in different parts of the value chain. I'll give you an example in pharma, since we haven't talked much about that today. Normally, have you ever wondered how they figure out what molecule to take to a trial? In other words, if you have millions and billions of molecules and drugs you could pick from, it takes generally 5 to 7 years to narrow down from millions of molecules and compounds down to something you take to a trial for a clinical trial. And so, for example, in that space, to optimize the way in which you go from a selection down to a molecule or a compound for a trial, there's a company that works on AWS called Numerate, And they take millions of molecules. In fact, in one example, took 280 million molecules, compounds, and looked at its absorption to the human, distribution, elimination, metabolism, looked at the particular cancer they were looking at, the 3D structure of the protein, the surface, and applied 10 CPU centuries of compute in 1 year. That's 1,000 compute years applied in 1 year with thousands of machine learning models to go from 280 million candidates of molecules to 69 to study for a particular cancer. That narrowing, that optimization of the hit rate is the kind of speed we're seeing where people are applying technology, machine learning, big data to optimize parts of the value chain. I'll just give you an example of early research. I mean, you could talk about clinical trials, you could talk about other things that have been talked about, but we're certainly seeing a lot of desire for speed in a lot of the customers, and they're applying machine learning to that.
I absolutely love the optimism. I'm going to put some reality on this.
But that's
There are 144, now 148
Are you now the redhead
AI companies that are working in discovery. 33 of them have done deals with drug companies. The number of CPU cycles that have been run on Amazon to invent new molecules and do lead optimization has resulted over the last 20 years of cloud compute in how many drugs that have entered the market? None. Because the same bottleneck, which I think is going to be the greatest thing that we can ever do with the digital revolution, is to revolutionize trials. We have to completely rethink the speed at which we go from a lead candidate and iterate rapidly and drop arms and create new trial arms, use Bayesian statistics to say whether things are working better or not in real time for cancer patients, asthma patients, people with ingrowing toenails. It doesn't matter. But even if you've got the best quantum supercomputer in the world that will definitely find you the drug that you want for that cancer, which won't happen that easily, by the way, but we had it tomorrow, it would still take 10 years to start talking to me about this new infliximab or whatever you decide to call it.
So how do you fix that?
Well, we need to definitely not just think about the discovery part. We have to fix trials.
I think in the life science value chain, there are probably about 5 parts to it. There's sort of early drug discovery, there's clinical trials, manufacturing, commercialization, and digital therapeutics in a sense. So if you look at those 5, there's certainly absolutely a desire and a need to optimize all parts of the value chain. Simply to not talk the whole time, I give an example of one part of it, but you're spot on right. We need to optimize the entire, sort of bring lubrication to the whole value chain.
Including education. So if you told me right now that I had to learn a new word in Hebrew, it would take me a while to get that sinking into my head and to use that word instead of, I don't know, what I would use in English. It would take me a while. You'd have to convince me. You'd have to take me to congresses. You'd have to reteach me that word. That's exactly what pharma companies have to do. They have to re-educate doctors once they've got market approval to go and flog this thing. And that's another thing that we haven't talked about in the value chain, is how the digital revolution in health is going to help me keep up to date, not with changing my prescription every 10 years, but changing it every 6 months.
And what about the regulators?
But there is this concept of real-world evidence, which you can change to rapidly evolving insights, because now, instead of a clinical trial, which is always a subset of a subset of a subset, looking at 10 factors while there may be 500 factors at play. So now we can collect that data, we can, create these gates. Instead of one gate, the trial is approved or not approved. You can create multiple gates and enrich as you go along and fine-tune as you go along. But I think that's a revolution in itself, I guess.
You asked about the regulation. One nice approach that I've seen 2 years ago when I visited Skolkovo. It's a huge business park in Moscow, and they wanted to bring new practices of healthcare, clinics, hospitals to Russia in order to provide healthcare to the Russian population. But they understood that if they bring clinics from Israel, from South Korea, from other places in the world, with their doctors, practices, drugs, devices, everything will be stuck with the Russian regulation. So they understood that this is a real problem, that it could take them decades to bring such a best practice. So they decided that the whole Skolkovo cluster will be a regulation-free zone. So in order to bring these best practices to Skolkovo, you don't need the local regulation approval. You just need the original country regulation approval of these practices, and you can bring the doctors, the devices, the drugs from home, and really give this practice to the local population. And I think that this is a really nice approach on trying to...
A free health zone instead of a free economic zone. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. So let's move to one last subject, which is data. And today in the healthcare industry, as I understand it, data is in lots of buckets controlled by lots of people. Take a drug trial example. I'll give you one. Alzheimer's. There have been 156 various drugs developed in Alzheimer's in the last 20 years. Those 156 drug trials cost $700 billion to run. And out of that, there are 4 drugs that came out, none of them particularly effective. And now that data from all those trials sit in little silos of 1,000 people. There's all this data post-clinical. There's data from the hospitals. Can we be sharing data more? Would that make a difference? Would that be a real change in the way the system works?
Of course. You know, it's obvious. Quality data is what feeds AI. So it's just hard to deal with first the legal status of it. You know, if you do an MR with the hospital, are you the owner or is the hospital the owner? What rights do you have to it? And there's some legislation that may say, okay, I send it to you within 30 days, you have to give me $20, and do you have a fax number so I can fax it to you? So I think there's a regulatory framework that needs to support it, but then, most importantly, there needs to be a willingness. In the Netherlands, we have 80 hospitals, and I believe if all these 80 hospitals start sharing data, and I as a person, as a citizen of the Netherlands, have access to that data and can share that as I wish, I think it would dramatically promote, you know, care and innovation. And I know Israel has a different approach to data, so I'm really curious to hear about how that promotes innovation and care in Israel.
Yeah, so taking the concept of data, I think one specific thing that we do well is here in Israel is taking the amounts of data, like you mentioned, there's a lot, and making it very, very, very specific. And now what does that mean exactly? At least from IDF perspective, you can take all the data that exists and create your own type of data towards your needs, whether it's, like you mentioned, predicting those injuries or physiological stress, but at the end of the day, building your algorithms or building your data sets to fit the specific needs that people here in Israel are using.
We look at the data in 2 phases. One of them is the secondary use of data, and we suppose till the end of this year to accomplish a regulation for this that built together with the industry and the health organization and the Ministry of Justice in Israel in order to drive this area faster. This is one thing. Second thing is the exchanging data between health organizations is very important for health sequencing. So now in Israel, for several years, we've got infrastructure that if, for example, you're getting inside one hospital, you can see the last things you've done at the HMO, and it's very good with the treatment. But if we look on this in another side, in what you're asking the patients, what he wants. And some patients want to share the data, especially with health organizations. It's more comfortable to share the data with health organization. It's a safe place, and it's sometimes a little hard for patient to share the data with firms that he doesn't know enough, and afraid that he use this sensitive data on things that he doesn't want them to use. So it's still, there is a way to work till using this data.
I want just to try to connect it to the kind of progressive treatments that you discussed before. I think that the more that we try dangerous things, the importance of data sharing is increasing dramatically. And like in the aviation industry, that they have the black box, that for every airplane crash, for every accident, for every failure, the whole industry is being known and acknowledged about the lessons learned. And this is what creates every crash a kind of an opportunity for the whole industry to improve. I think that in progressive treatments and in more advanced, the importance of this sharing, not only with the patient, not only with the treating company, but with the whole industry, is crucial in order to create this advancement in this domain.
And actually, if you look at, there's a difference, for instance, between, well, I've got diabetes, you know, if I take metformin and I look after myself, I'm probably going to live maybe a bit longer than someone without diabetes who's not taking metformin, by the way. That's a hot tip if anyone wants a biohacking thing. Look up the TAME trial. Everyone should be on metformin, it seems, maybe. But there's a difference in diabetes and, let's say, a really terminal situation or something where you know in your family you're almost certainly going to get Alzheimer's. People who are facing really, really bad situations are extremely willing to share everything about themselves, but do not expect everyone to share everything about their diabetes and whether they're going swimming or whether they wear red underwear or other things like that. When you have a situation where you're facing death, people want the right to try. They are willing to share their data, and they're willing to go on much more radical and unsafe things because the inevitable is that they're going to die anyway. And so we have to we've done a lot of work with the brain cancer moonshot in the UK that I lead the data and emerging technology stream for, and understanding the difference in the tolerance between sharing data types.
So, yeah, sorry. Jerome.
Yeah, so there's been research in Europe about people's willingness to share data, clearly anonymized.
Yes.
And similar to, you know, organ donorship, it turned out that if you ask the right questions, you know, and we all know the difference between opt-in and opt-out, etc. But about 80% of the people are willing to share anonymized health data if the intent is the right one. Research that helps maybe themselves or, you know, the larger population. But of course, there's the element of trust that we talked about earlier. But I think we will be amazed about the willingness to share data.
And I'll add one last thought, on, at least from my side, which is even when we do share data, what we're hearing from AWS customers that actually normalizing data, contextually mapping it so that it ontologically makes sense to be able to create a longitudinal record of an individual itself poses challenges. So my data format, your data format may not be, so even if you get past the regulatory and financial questions, there's still data wrangling to be done. How do you actually wrangle it together so that I can actually extract knowledge from it? And there's still more work that needs to be done in the field of actually ontologic mapping, data normalization, for us to be able to really take advantage of that. And certainly we're working with our customers on that, and I know folks here probably as well. So there's still another headwind in addition that we're hearing from our customers, that data wrangling is difficult.
So I want to give you a little anecdote. So
we're running out of time. Just
very, very quickly. So 20 years ago, I was running the tech lab for Citibank, and we launched internet banking. Everybody told me, you're wasting your time. Nobody's ever going to do their banking on the internet. And now people keep telling me the same thing. You know, patients don't want to put their data in the cloud. And it's going to happen. And it's going to be driven by actually consumers willing and wanting to do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Great panel. Thank you, Barak. Thank you, all panelists. It was very interesting.